and passion to life in public service, even as a 17-year-old high school student. When she told me that she had been working on this book project and had talked about doing some sort of panel and book signing, I was 100% on board from the beginning. And one of the reasons why this is so important is because, as we all know, it's not a cliche, the youth is our future, and we need to do whatever we can to impart the wisdom and knowledge that we have, because we were given that same opportunity from people that came before us. So this is an incredibly important evening for us and for them and for this book. I want to thank my council colleagues, James Solomon, Councilwoman Amy Degise, and Prosecutor Jake Hudnut for also being a part of this conversation. So First Steps into Criminal Justice Activism for Youth is a fantastic book and a fantastic primer for young people. It breaks down important issues, it gives them case studies, and it helps them frame their own questions and conversations about issues that are important to them and how they can engage with different elected officials, with people that are appropriate stakeholders at different levels of government. And when we started going down this road to talk about the event, we wanted to make sure that we had good partners and good stakeholders to talk about their experience, but also listen to these young women who have been part of the Justice Education Project to get their perspective and understand their questions and concerns about this process. Because that's really one of the most important jobs of legislators, is to listen. Because without that point of view, we don't always have the informed decisions that we make to make our legislative decisions and to move these kind of policies forward that are important to the people of the city, the county, and the state. So as a council person, I have had the pleasure to work with Marissa. She has helped me on resolutions and legislation, and it's been very important to get her perspective. And I think that as we share our experiences, that is really the best way to understand our commonalities, but also our differences, because each one person comes with a different point of view. And so with that, I am going to pass it over to Irene Kim. She is the Executive Director and founder of the Justice Education Project. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about the organization, about the book and the program.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Councilwoman. For many Americans, prisons are at the foundation of what we imagine to be a just system. Prisons are these places where those criminals are sent away so that the rest of society can remain safe. It's a system in which people are always held accountable for their actions. Or so we are told. Society's preconception of prisons has been anchored in the dehumanization of the people detained in them. Oftentimes, not much consideration is spared for the actual corruption within prisons. Rather, the focus is that prisons get criminals out of sight and out of mind. Yet, as of 2020, America had placed over 2.3 million people in its prisons and jails. To put this into perspective, only 5% of the world's population is housed in the US, yet our country houses over 25% of the world's prison population. From large percentages of assaults to the neglecting of mental health, to thousands of wrongful convictions, and even to the deprivation of incarcerated people's most basic needs, it's become increasingly urgent to foster discourse on the corruption within the system. And with a new spike in media attention towards racial injustices, youth have finally begun entering the conversation. I remember it was just 3 years ago when I first birthed the idea of founding the Justice Education Project. And now, from publishing a book on legal reform to hosting a national summit and even donating thousands of products to prisons, we have finally stepped up. 3 years later, Justice Education Project's members hail from over 20 different parts of the country. And it continues to be our hope as Generation Z that we grow to become a more globally aware subset of people, and that we can work together to dismantle the unjust systems of our country, creating a more equitable society. Thank you, and I'd now like to welcome Marissa and Neha, our outreach directors.
Thank you, everyone. I'm the co-outreach director for JEP alongside Neha. I was inspired to join the Justice Education Project because I wanted to get involved in learning about the criminal justice system and its flaws. When I first saw JEP on social media for the first time during the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement, I knew I had to join. Since then, I've worked in JEP for the past 2 years, and I've grown from being a general member to now currently one of the 2 outreach directors in the organization. We in the outreach department have done so much to ensure that JEP would grow as an organization. Just some of the work that we've spearheaded recently includes the Canvassing Project, which is a project in which we reach out to different policymakers in our local area, as well as coordinating and facilitating different promotional events, such as this one. I'm going to pass it off to Neha now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Neha, and along with Marissa, I am the co-outreach director of the Justice Education Project. Some of my job duties entail supervising our webinar series, in which every month we have a politician, a local activist, or someone similar share a little bit of their work and how we can get involved as members of the Justice Education Project and again for the general public. I also, along with Marissa, help plan events just like this book signing and supervise some of our applications, and that's just a little bit of what I do. Personally, I joined JEP about 2 years ago through something that's typically seen as negative, peer pressure. Jokes aside, joining such an amazing criminal justice organization like JEP has really been an eye-opening experience and one that I'm not going to forget. It's amazing to get to work on some of JEP's ongoing projects, just like this book that I did when I first joined, where I got the rewarding experience of listening to the raw and unfiltered accounts of lawyers and exonerees discussing their personal experiences with the carceral system and sharing some of their own knowledge. I really hope that while people read this book, they're able to see the true impact of those people's words and really understand that the criminal justice system doesn't just affect people that are statistics, but actual people's lives and their families, and it has a real impact.
And once again, I'm Irene. I'm the executive director of the Justice Education Project and founder. And I wanted to once again thank everyone for joining today's book promotional events. Along with Councilwoman Mira, we have an amazing lineup of speakers today that we are so excited to hear from. But before that, we wanted to officially introduce our new book, First Steps into Criminal Justice Activism for Youth. This book was introduced as a baby idea just 2 years ago, and we've since undergone months of both obstacles and opportunities to ensure that we publish this book. And we've even stand where we are today, even getting an article written by Teen Vogue on our book. So we'll first describe who we are and what the Justice Education Project is, give a brief thank you to our partners, introduce the book, and finally close with how you can support us.
So as we've just covered, went into a little bit of who we are and our positions already, and I'm going to go a little bit into where we're located. As Irene has briefly said, we are a national organization, which means we have chapters across the country. So namely, we've had over 19 chapters in the 3 years that JEP's been made, and we're only hoping to go from here. Personally, as an outreach director of JEP, part of my job is supervising these chapters. So I help create the curriculum, help them create their quantifiable goals that they can achieve later on, as well as just design fundraisers for them to fundraise for causes that Marissa will touch on later, with one such example being our menstrual hygiene product drive, where we donated over 10,000 menstrual hygiene products. I also, as I said, supervise a chapter in Mira Loma, which is where I'm based in Sacramento, California. So it's been a really rewarding experience getting to see the connections with organizations in my local area, as well as in the national level with JEP.
And as we conversed with our directors and had difficult conversations about the direction of our organization, we decided we could best consolidate our mission into 3 words: educate, empower, and encourage. So with educate, we provide analyses and explanations of the issues that exist within the criminal justice system. We do this through objective research with our research directors and partnering with renowned organizations such as the Equal Justice Initiative and the Innocence Project. We empower by empower and equipping Gen Z with the tools needed to harness our collective youth power and advocate for the injustices in the criminal justice system. And we encourage. We encourage youth to engage in conversations with policymakers, to advocate for real changes that must be made, while remaining nonpartisan, of course, but being straightforward in our mission. And we've done this not only this past month with Councilwoman Mira, but also in forming email and phone templates to local policymakers so that we could raise our voices and communicate and advocate for the injustices in the system.
So what is JEP and what have we done so far? Keeping these three pillars Irene mentioned of our organization in mind, educate, empower, and encourage, JEP has made so much progress over the past 3 years. We've accomplished so much, just some of which include partnering with the Her Drive to donate over 15,000 menstrual hygiene products to incarcerated women in 11+ states, researched over 100+ topics for our social media with over 300,000 impressions, donated 1.5K for KIND, which is an organization that supports deported and detained immigrant children, donated over 300 books to the incarcerated people in New York, and finally have had many webinars hosting so many different organizations and people such as Senators Jason Pizzo, the Manhattan Supreme Court, ACLU, Innocence Project, and even a national day-long summit this past year.
Along with all of those amazing accomplishments, one of the biggest things that we've done at JEP is write our book, which we published last September in 2021, September of 2021, excuse me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we wrote it, because obviously all of you here know that the criminal justice system does have many issues in which we've all sought to have reforms for, but specifically, why did we want to cater our book to Gen Z? Well, the simplest answer is Gen Z is not informed as it stands currently. One of the polls that we were looking into while researching for this book in February of 2019, a My Voice poll specifically, concluded that 56% of youth from the ages of 14 to 24 knew little to nothing about the criminal justice system. This statistic alone is extremely shocking, considering this legal system is what bases upon what a lot of our civil and modern society is founded upon. And if people are uninformed on how it works, how are they supposed to advocate for themselves and know their rights? So we wanted to make this book cater to Gen Z by Gen Z, which is all of us here, to make sure that they would be more educated going forward and knew their rights. Oh, sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rasika Shriram.
I'm going to introduce one of our research directors. Her name is Rasika Shriram, as you just heard, and she was one of the creative directors for the book who came up with the idea in February of 2021 to write it, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experiences.
One of the research directors of the Justice Education Project, as well as a creative director for the book that is having a book signing right now, which is just crazy to imagine that an idea I had February of 2021 just came to reality. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how this book came to life. And it came to life truly because of the passion that teenagers across the country had for criminal justice activism, and that passion that we wanted to create and share with the rest of Gen Z, because there was really no comprehensive or anything catering towards the audience of Gen Z surrounding criminal justice activism. And this book does exactly that. It is written by Gen Z for Gen Z, and it gives the youth a chance to learn about the system in kind of terms that are easy for them to understand. The book has a bunch of key terms and definitions so that the youth can truly understand what's happening with our justice system. And it also gives them the tools that they need to step forward into life and, fight against the injustices that happen in our country every single day. And that is truly what this book is about. And I'm so excited that it came to life. And I just have to thank all of the research team members, all of the members that interviewed, professors, and, we did this book without basically any adult supervision. There's just a bunch of teenagers writing a book, and we did the best that we could to make it correct. We researched super hard to make sure that everything was accurate, and we had it proofreaded by a lot of professors. So I'm just so happy to see it come to a reality, and I can't wait to see what else JEP does.
Thank you so much to Rasika. Moving on to the next slide. As we've mentioned, this book was specifically meant for youth, young and passionate activists who wanted to learn more about the criminal justice system, but were confused and likely didn't have much of a prior legal understanding or background. So to ensure that we could make the book as accessible as possible for youth, we made sure to implement various features in our book. And these included key terms at the beginning of every chapter, interviews from professors, personal stories from exonerees and previously incarcerated individuals, graphs for visualization of statistics, and Q&As for common misconceptions. And you can see this in our next slide here. Here, if you see chapter 2, the history of the criminal justice system, we incorporated key terms from the Bill of Rights and convict leasing all the way to gerrymandering and the Jim Crow laws. We also incorporated various figures, such as figure 1.3, which is in chapter 1, and this clearly shows that the US is currently a leader in incarceration rates. And before, just to introduce our video, Chor, who is one of our research directors, had a very unique experience in our book writing process, where she ended up, one of her interviews with an exoneree ended up being over 2 hours. And it was a very emotional process for both of them. And so she'll be sharing her experience in this video.
Hi, I'm Chor. I was one of the assistant creative directors as well as the interview liaison for our book. So we started working on this book in around January of 2021, and it was definitely a difficult process just getting everything started, finding the topics that we wanted, structuring, formatting, all of that. And of course, near the end, having everyone write it, edit, etc. But as the interview liaison coordinator, I definitely think the hardest part was finding the first-hand accounts to interview. So it was just difficult to find the contact information for all of the people who had undergone these experiences. And we really wanted to include these personal stories because we didn't want to just present a fact book of the criminal justice system for activists. We also wanted to present the human aspect, so the real effects of the corrupted system. And we wanted to do that through the amplification of these voices, because too often these stories are really dehumanized through the use of statistics when presenting the system. And so we really made an effort to include the stories. So I remember one of my first interviews with an exoneree went for about 2 hours, so it was a bit longer than expected, but it was genuinely just an experience that I'll never forget. He opened up for the first time. He started talking about the effects of being wrongly convicted, how it affected his mental health, his family, all of such personal things. And so it also opened up my eye as well into the real manifestations of the corruption within our system. And so I hope that when everyone goes to read our book, that they pay special attention to these personal stories. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chor. So what do we want people to gain from reading our book? We have 3 main aims. 1 is to deconstruct misconceptions, further unbiased and objective information. 2, to combat dehumanization of incarcerated people like Chor mentioned. And finally, to clarify the complexities of the legal system to youth and any beginner activists. Passing it off to Irene.
And in order to ensure objective research and accuracy of our book, we have to thank our partners for supporting us through the process. First, we want to thank Professor Rebecca Ginsburg of EJP, which is a college and prison program, and she's also a professor of UIUC. She went through and revised every single page of our book, and she emailed us back a manuscript that was completely read and marked up, and for that, we could not have been more thankful. We also want to thank the National Police Accountability Project, who revised the policing section of our book and ensured that all of the information was accurate and objective. And finally, we want to thank the Equal Justice Initiative, which is a renowned organization founded by Brian Stevenson, as one of the lawyers in his organization revised and skimmed through our book to ensure that all information was accurate. So thank you.
Directors. We have one more video from one of our research directors named Ariana that worked extremely hard on this book, discussing how rewarding the experience was for her. Directors having that group effort, to have a holistic view of the criminal justice system in a way that JEP hasn't done before, that was particularly fulfilling. And sitting there with the full manuscript and all the edits and comments and just sifting through it was truly a powerful moment.
So moving on to our final slide, just to support us in order to continue our initiatives and events like this, we would love your help by donating us to this QR code here to support our efforts, purchasing our book, and also keeping in touch through all of our social media handles.
Now on to speakers. We again have an amazing lineup of speakers here. So starting it off with Councilman Solomon, our speakers from Ward E. Councilman Solomon believes in a just and efficient government. As a dad, a cancer survivor, a teacher, and someone who leads from the outside, Councilman Solomon is committed to making Jersey City a place that supports all our families, not just the well-connected. Councilman's vision for Jersey City includes affordable housing and good schools, demanding for more transparency and most notably, racial justice for every resident and every family. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, Marissa, Neha, for all the incredible work you guys are doing here. Let's look at the video. Perfect. So it's an honor to be able to speak with you guys tonight, and I'll try to be very brief, but just offer a few remarks on why your initiative is so inspiring and why having you guys do this is going to lead to hopefully a better Jersey City, better New Jersey, and better United States. So a couple thoughts. First is I teach Intro to American Politics as well as other courses at some of our local universities, Hudson County Community College, NJCU, and St. Peter's. And to the point that you guys made, there isn't any book that clearly and accurately explains criminal justice activism for your generation. And so just by creating this book, you've now offered something that I can use in my courses, that other professors can use, and that can ensure that folks are fully knowledgeable about the facts of our criminal justice system, mass incarceration, and how we can create change. Second piece of that is that there is so much good work to do at the city and the state levels that oftentimes it's just done by getting folks to show up. That people say half the battle in politics is just being there, just being in the room. And oftentimes there are ideas that we as elected officials are unaware of that you as youth can bring to us that we may not have seen or heard or been aware of across the country. So your research can lead to actionable change by encouraging young people to speak up, to use the power of your voices, and to make sure that we are all aware of the change that we need to do. Well, I was asked to speak a little bit about, what role we have, and I and Councilwoman Tagis and Councilwoman Prinz-Arey are on the City Council. And the prosecutor will speak, I think, a lot about the criminal justice aspects from the prosecutorial and defense sides. On the council, we're trying to sort of set laws and policies. And at the city level, we have a smaller avenue in which we can do that, but we can't set policies around policing and making sure that policing for the city meets the sort of goals of racial justice and equitable justice and a safe city. And then we can work on things like setting levels of fines and trying to figure out how our city and how citizens interact with the court system at the municipal level. So there's a couple things within the city council purview. But then some of the things that we think about too is how can we push our higher levels of government to take action? So a lot of the policies of criminal justice are set at the state level, so we don't have direct, immediate control over that, but we can use our voices. We can try to create change. And that's something that I wanted to do on a number of issues. One, just briefly to mention, is a civilian complaint review board, which is the idea that if there's allegations of misconduct by police officers, there's an independent civilian group that investigates those conducts and then makes recommendations about what to do, as opposed to those investigations occurring within the very police department in which people are accused of. And unfortunately, we don't have the direct authority in Jersey City to establish a civilian complaint review board with kind of power and teeth and the ability to really create change, but we can try to figure out what are our tools to push the state to create change. And that's where partnering with local activists can be an extraordinarily important part. And there isn't a right strategy. When you don't have the direct power, you have to just think about what are other ways to do it. But that is an area in which the city can try to use its voice to try to create change at higher levels. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to mention, but I just want to say I'm extraordinarily grateful for your guys' work. You've done an extraordinary amount in the last couple of years, and I'm really eager to see where you guys go from here. So thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Solomon, for that amazing speech. Now we have another speaker, Councilwoman Tagis. She is a proud lifelong resident of Jersey City. Councilwoman Tagis believes in bringing individuals of all demographic ages and backgrounds together. She works closely with Mayor Phillip and the community to expand youth work-based learning programs, increasing civic engagement, and personally, she also works in county prep in Jersey City. I've had an amazing time working with the councilwoman within county prep on various issues, one of which include menstrual equity, a topic that is very important for us at the Justice Education Project as well. That being said, Councilwoman Tagis, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Now I'm gonna have to readjust this. Gotta learn your angles, James. Whew. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, ladies, for bringing this here. When I was invited to speak, I did want to take the approach as an educator in some curriculum that we're working on. And I also, as a person who has served on boards, whether they were elected, appointed, or just community-based boards, I do strongly believe that we need more youth representation because they advocate for the right things and really can give us more information. So I'm working on something within schools and getting approval from the state for a curriculum for community-based learning. And that would be something that bridges classroom academics with civic development and engagement and address community policy on issues or just one or two things to advocate for. It emphasizes mentorship and collaboration with community stakeholders and gives our youth a way to contribute to a mission, all the while developing really valuable career readiness skills that they're going to need their entire lives. I hope now as a council person to work and develop ways that local departments and independent boards can mentor the youth and students in our community on outreach, planning, and what they're advocating for. I believe it's a way for our youth to collaborate on the planning that will affect their neighborhoods or an issue that they are insanely passionate about. And it will contribute to our quality of life and the delivery of services that we can get. As Councilman Solomon said, we only know what's in our realm. We need more voices so we can create action or at least provide a voice. I think that this type of community-based learning also offers the same values as the civic values that we're trying to teach our children and the rest of our community. It's all about service, engagement, community involvement, and advocacy. I think that we have to give these youth a way to dive into a topic that they're passionate about and mentor them on how to gear their energy. Youth should be encouraged to raise issues, to advocate for something, and to help design a policy that is going to change their neighborhood, their city, their state, or even further. I've worked in the high school area for about 14 years now. That's how I came to know Marissa. I was a history teacher, so you talk a lot about civics and getting involved, and now I do work-based learning and workforce development. But in my 14 years of working with teenagers and having previously been a really bad one, teenagers are filled with, excuse me, but piss and vinegar at this age. They have a fire, and we need to show them how to use that fire, because it will die out. Because they go on, they get older, and all of a sudden that fire in them gets lighter and lighter and dimmer and dimmer. And we need more opportunities like this to show them you could put a book out. You could be a creative designer on a published book. You could do a book signing at this age. You don't have to be some doctorate candidate. You don't have to be from a wealthy background. Anyone can do it. So I really do feel like having youth representation on boards and that community-based learning will gear more activists like these young ladies in our community. I think including a youth representative on boards, whether they're public or private, allows us to see a youth perspective, which is very, very different sometimes. It provides a youth voice, and it gains more buy-in for youth to stay engaged in what's going on in their community or in an issue that they're following on social media. I do also believe that we should show a commitment to youth leadership by allowing more youths on the board. And for any young person out there that would like to get involved, whether it's on a board or just from home, I had some things that I had written down as some words of wisdom. Get comfortable, listen actively, ask as many questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Always have confidence in yourself and in your abilities to be a leader. Even if you don't feel like a leader at that moment, you're building up to there. Always build relationships with other people as mentors. These could be people in your family or already involved in an issue that you're trying to advocate for. These are the people that are really going to guide those fine initiatives that you need to work on and help you grow. Use this as a way to be a leader. Show everyone, other youth and adults, that you are capable, intelligent, mature, and confident. Always stay interested and curious. The work may not always be very interesting or riveting, but you can find the interest in it and you can continue giving that to other people. Always show up, do your research, attend every meeting, watch everything you can, listen to everything that you can, and communicate with people regularly to stay on top of new ideas. Discover ways that you can make contributions from where you are, whether that's your economic state, whether that's where you live, who you're around. You can contribute your money, your time, your resources, your mind to something. Always understand that there will be diverse perspectives. Do not let that deter you. Allow it to be a way that you can compromise, build bridges, and also learn other people's perspectives to help gain their partnership in this too. Don't isolate anyone, even if they have a different opinion than you or a radically different opinion. We need everyone in this together. I'm so appreciative that these young ladies were able to deliver this year, and I hope that they are the inspiration for many more, and they'll contribute to our Jersey City and Hudson County history. So thank you very much.
And our final speaker of the night is Prosecutor Jake Hudnut. Prosecutor was sworn in as Jersey City's Chief Prosecutor in 2018 and oversees the city's Public Safety Division of Quality of Life Enforcement. Some of his work has included decriminalized simple marijuana possession and launching innovative initiatives for victims of domestic violence. He's represented over 500 people charged with crimes and is also an adjunct professor of criminal law. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I really appreciate the thoughtful invitation and some of the conversations we had leading up. Marissa, it was very clear you had looked into my office's work and knew what we were doing in the criminal justice space. And so my story is, I've been on both sides of the aisle. I was a criminal defense attorney for about 8 years before I approached the mayor about serving as prosecutor. And I ended up doing defense because when I left law school, I clerked for a criminal judge in Newark, and I watched the trials. And at the time, I didn't know which direction I wanted to go in, but watching those trials, I found myself rooting for the defendant. So I started interviewing with public defender offices, and eventually decided to go solo and hung out my own shingle 1 year out of law school. And I also did public defending work for them on the side. And I was a very zealous, very committed defense attorney. And, flipping through the book, there's so much in there that, I've experienced on the front lines and really fought for every day in court. Keeping the focus on a client's rights and giving a voice to somebody who probably doesn't even trust the system, but they're in the system. And sometimes when you're court appointed, they don't even trust you. And so the hardest barrier is to sort of establish that rapport. After doing that for about 7 years, one of the things that Marissa asked me to touch on was how I came to be municipal prosecutor. In New Jersey, there's two types of criminal courts. There's the county court where felonies are prosecuted. New Jersey likes to make everything complicated, so we don't call felonies felonies here. We call felonies crimes, and we call misdemeanors offenses. And we're the only state that does that. And felonies go to the county, and that's where I defended individuals, everything from drug possession to weapon possession to homicide. But I also would do municipal work when I had clients charged with misdemeanors. Municipal courts also handle code enforcement and traffic violations. And I hated going to municipal court anywhere in the state. There's 500 some municipal courts in the state of New Jersey, and they vary very differently. Jersey Cities has 6 courtrooms that go up 3 times a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening for 18 sessions total. And then there's some municipal courts in the state that actually, in the year 2018, a handful of them never went up because no tickets were written in those towns. But I felt as a defense attorney, wherever I went, there was sort of this conveyor belt feeling, like I wasn't able to have an intelligent conversation with a prosecutor or a thorough opportunity to address the judge the way I was in the superior court, where everybody was full-time. And that's kind of the issue, is most municipal courts in New Jersey, everybody's part-time, with the exception of Newark and Jersey City. It's a full-time operation. So I got so fed up with the municipal court system, I thought, why don't I approach the mayor about becoming part of it and changing it? And so I did that in 2018. And the first thing we did out of the box was institute a local policy to downgrade marijuana possession to local ordinances, because there had sort of been this misnomer in New Jersey that a municipal prosecutor couldn't downgrade marijuana. And we took it all the way to the Attorney General, and we landed with a statewide policy that did allow that sort of decriminalization. This was in the summer of 2018. Public opinion was widely in favor of decriminalization and legalization, but Trenton was taking a long time to figure out how they would do that. It would still take them another 2 years to do that. So we decided to push the ball forward. Some of the other work that I've done is, I'll say, when I was a defense attorney and I would negotiate with a prosecutor at the county, quite often they'd say, okay, the victim, I'd say my client, because in a courtroom, really the focus is always the defendant. And when I teach criminal law, a lot of my students want to be police officers. And so they have a hard time understanding why the entire textbook is really about the defendant. And that's because once you get to court, it really is about the defendant, his or her rights, and his or her punishment, if punishment is warranted, if there is a conviction. When I used to have conversations with prosecutors and they would say, the community is my client, or the victim is my client, I'll be honest, as a defense attorney, I kind of didn't take that seriously. When you switch to being a prosecutor, you sort of see that. You see the communities that are affected by crime, you sort of see the expectations that people have for justice, and you certainly have a different experience with victims because you're the one sort of holding their hand behind the scenes, not just when they're a witness on the stand. So some of the things we did was we made our office more accessible to the public. Marissa, as you pointed out when you asked me to speak, when I started, our office was physically inaccessible. It was labeled a restricted area. There was no receptionist. There was no way to buzz that door. There was one phone line that no one picked up. The lawyers that I inherited didn't even have phones, computers, emails. And with the support of the mayor and the council, we were able to give all those resources to this office. And now it really is a forward-facing local prosecutor's office. And there's nothing like it elsewhere in the state at the municipal level. And we're constantly contacted by residents that have sometimes had bad experiences with police that they want to bring to our attention, or they need code enforcement. There's something happening on their street, blight that needs to be reduced. And so we've really put ourselves out there. And again, I draw on some of my experience as a defense attorney when I would meet folks that didn't trust the system. So I see it as my job now to sort of give the public trust in the system by creating a prosecutor's office that is accessible. And we've done a lot of work with victims. We have I'll conclude with this. One of the hardest things about prosecuting domestic violence, which most domestic violence cases come to the municipal court, is quite often there's been a reconciliation between the victim and the defendant outside of court. And without the victim's cooperation, it's very hard to prosecute that case. And quite often there might be a reconciliation, but more often than not, there's going to be another incident. And quite often it escalates to more serious crime. But one of the things we do is we require every victim to have a private conversation with a counselor outside the presence of attorneys, outside the courtroom, to be advised of local resources, to be advised that in case they need to leave their relationship, in case they have any injuries they need addressed by victim compensation funds, so that we feel really confident when we do have a victim that declines to participate in a prosecution. And we also have, we're the only municipal court in the state. We have a safe space waiting room for victims of domestic violence, so they don't have to wait in the courtroom for their cases to be called, or they don't have to wait in the hallway and risk running into the defendant. They have a safe space with childcare toys and things like that, because quite often they bring children with them. So that's some of the things we've done. And I'll just say, one of the questions that Marissa said was, what would you say to young people that want to be mindful about justice? And I'll say, I guess my story is an example of sort of change from within. Activism's never necessarily been my strong suit, but when I saw a criminal justice system that I didn't like, I decided to join it and sort of change it from within. So I would say there's many ways to change the system, including being part of it and being the prosecutor or the public defender or the police officer that you want to be, that you think is appropriate. So I think it's really appropriate that you're having these conversations and educating young people. And I wish you lots of luck, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come and speak about my experience. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody so much for joining, and I want to also thank all of the council members and the prosecutor for being able to speak to us today. I know we're all extremely thankful that we got to hear y'all's perspective and hear all of the advice that you have going forward. I especially liked hearing from Councilwoman Degise those kinds of different aspects about how civics can be included in education and how important it is for youth to really listen when that's talked about. I also liked how the prosecutor discussed getting involved in the criminal justice system. When you see something you don't like, the best way to change it is to get involved and try to fix it. So thank you so much for speaking. I also want to quickly discuss an upcoming event that we have going on at JEP. Let me just pull it up really quick. Sorry about that. This is going to take place July 30th. It's taking place at the Church of Ascension in Greenpoint, New York. It's going to discuss the intersection of criminal justice and algorithmic justice. So essentially how are AI and facial recognition systems biased. So I encourage anybody who's able to, who's in the area, to join if you're curious about how far reaching the effects of the criminal justice system can be, especially as it relates to other topics, not just kind of the broad institution, but specifically AI. So if you are interested, feel free to take a picture of this or ask us afterwards for the link, but this will take you to a link to register. So once again, thank you everybody so much, and I'll pass it off to Marissa.
Thank you, Neha, for that. So we've concluded with all our speakers for today, and on behalf of JEP, I just wanted to once again thank you all for joining us and the wonderful speakers for joining us today. So again, our QR code, if you like, is not above anymore, but it was, so hopefully you got a photo. To support us and donate, And then the link to purchase our book is also there. And we have a couple more books in the front, so if anybody wants books or stickers, please feel free to take one on your way out. We'll have time to, network and get to know one of each other. So that is all for tonight. Thank you so much for coming.